The crystal chandeliers in my Aunt Eleanor's New York City penthouse scattered light like fractured jewels, turning the grand living room into a glittering maze of ambition and legacy. I'm Claire Bennett, 36, and tonight at 8 p.m. on April 15, 2024, in a sleek navy sheathed dress, I felt like a quiet breath amid the roaring storm of the Harrington family's annual gala. The room hummed with clipped laughter, the clink of expensive glasses, and the sharp scent of expensive cologne, an intoxicating blend of wealth I was never supposed to claim. My relatives, the Harringtons, moved through the crowd like seasoned performers, each craving the spotlight in this high-stakes drama. I stayed close to the bar, my glass of sparkling water cold in my hand, observing their polished facades. Aunt Margot's gaze locked onto me from across the room, her lips curling into a smirk as she whispered to a cousin, "Still playing the wallflower, Claire? You'll never outshine us." Her words stung, but I kept my composure, knowing the truth they couldn't see. Aunt Margot's voice cut through the string quartet's melody. "Claire, darling, you still fetching lattes at, what was it, Next Lo-Fi Innovations? Such a waste for someone with your talents." Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were sharp knives. "Marketing strategist, dear. Still at Next Lo-Fi?" She raised a perfectly arched brow, clearly unimpressed. "Honestly, Claire, why bother with that startup? You're a Harrington. Act like one," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. I forced a smile, my grip tightening on the glass. "I'm exactly where I need to be, Aunt Margot," I replied, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "Why not aim for something real, something worthy of the Bennett name?" I swallowed the retort that rose in my throat. Her words were a familiar refrain from a family that prized appearances over ambition, tradition over innovation. Then my cousin Miles swaggered over, his new title, Chief Financial Officer at Harrington Ventures, adding to his swagger. "Claire, if you're tired of playing strategist, I could pull some strings for you in our finance department. Real work, you know." His smile was patronizing. "Or are you still chasing pipe dreams?" he added, leaning closer, his tone dripping with mockery. "You can't keep pretending you're one of us." My pulse quickened, but I met his gaze. "I'm not pretending, Miles. I'm building." I sipped my sparkling water, hiding the fire in my chest. If Miles knew I'd just closed a $75 million 0 cents consulting deal, he'd be the one shrinking in the shadows. "I'm happy where I am, Miles," I said softly. He snorted. "Happy's for the mediocre, Claire." I let his words drift past. My mind was already racing toward the Forbes feature Next Lo-Fi's PR team was arranging. Later, as Miles bragged to a group about his latest deal, I overheard Eleanor murmur, "Claire's delusions will ruin her. She's no match for this family." The words cut deeper than I'd admit, fueling my resolve to prove them wrong. Here in this sea of tailored suits and designer gowns, I was invisible, that I was already rewriting their story. 12 years ago, at 24, I stood in Aunt Eleanor's mahogany-panelled conference room, heart pounding with hope. Fresh from my Columbia MBA, I clutched a portfolio of slides and big dreams, a bold plan to revolutionize small business consulting. For a precious 10 minutes, their faces were neutral, curious. Then, Uncle Reginald, who controlled the Harrington real estate empire, chuckled dismissively. By the 20th minute, Eleanor's voice boomed. "Claire, you're clever, but this is fantasy consulting. Stick to something practical, like a nice marriage." Laughter erupted around the room, each guffaw slicing through me. Reginald leaned back, smirking. "You're too soft for this world, Claire. Leave the real work to us." I stood frozen. Their words a public execution of my dreams. My cheeks burned, but I lifted my chin as I left, their dismissal echoing like a storm. That night, under the rainy New York City sky, I vowed I would prove them wrong. I would build something they couldn't ignore, not for their approval, but for myself. I named it Apex Solutions, a symbol of the heights I intended to reach. In a cramped loft above a bustling deli in New York City's Lower East Side, I poured every penny and ounce of myself into a vision no one else believed in. Every night, as I worked alone, Eleanor's voice haunted me. "You'll fail, Claire." But each spreadsheet I built, each strategy I crafted, was a defiance of her prophecy. The Harringtons thought they'd silenced me, but they'd only sparked a fire that would outshine their chandeliers. Apex Solutions was born in that cluttered space with cracked hardwood floors and a single fogged window overlooking the graffiti-tagged alleys below. I was a one-woman army, armed with a laptop and a bold plan, radical restructuring for small businesses that big firms ignored. My first client was a struggling bakery on Orchard Street, drowning in debt and on the brink of closure. I spent weeks poring over their finances, renegotiating supplier contracts and designing a turnaround strategy. When their revenue rose 25% in just 3 months, whispers about Apex started circulating. The bakery owner hugged me, tears in her eyes. "You saved my family's legacy," she said. That moment drowned out the Harringtons' laughter. I was 25 and already felt the pulse of something larger. To protect my work, I remained anonymous, posing as a project manager while letting others take credit publicly. Behind the scenes, every decision was mine. Apex expanded quietly, branches in Seattle, Chicago, and Miami. But at family dinners, Miles would sneer. "Still playing small, Claire?" I'd smile, hiding the truth. I was outmaneuvering their empire in ways they'd never suspect. But to the Harringtons, I was still Claire, the strategist, invisible at family gatherings and dismissed in boardrooms. Each successful verting bankruptcy for Skyline Tech in Boston, revitalizing a craft brewery in Asheville, felt like a quiet rebellion. Late at night, I'd walk past my office, the blue glow from my laptop spilling onto the darkened street. I'd catch my reflection in the glass. Not the girl they mocked, but a woman carving her own destiny. My pride wasn't in fame, but in the lives I touched, one business at a time. When I discovered Harrington Enterprises, led by Uncle Reginald, was preying on vulnerable small businesses, my mission sharpened. They didn't rebuild. They tore down legacies to flip for profit. I refused to stand by. I assembled a team to track their targets. A fintech startup in Seattle, an artisanal coffee roaster in Boulder, Crawford Industries in Ohio. One night I intercepted a call meant for Reginald's team. "We'll crush Crawford," his associate gloated. My blood boiled. I wouldn't let them win. Before Reginald's team could swoop in, I'd contact these firms, offering a lifeline. "Let Apex review your books before you sign." Half agreed to meet, and most chose us. Our 90-day plans rebuilt cash flow, renegotiated contracts, and restored hope. Each business we saved, like Crawford, a family-owned machinery firm, was a blow to Harrington Enterprises. Sitting in my office, New York City's skyline sparkling behind me, I felt a surge of purpose. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. I was giving these businesses what the Harringtons never gave me: a chance. My team, sworn to secrecy, didn't know I was the founder. To them, I was Claire, the SETI coordinator keeping the gears turning. But every move, every strategy was mine. The air in Apex's New York City boardroom was electric as I prepared for the Crawford Dynamics meeting. At 36, I was done hiding. Dressed in a tailored emerald suit, I felt the weight of 12 years of silent victories. Nora, my assistant, laid out the files, merger terms, share percentages, acquisition plans. As I reviewed the documents, Nora whispered, "They'll underestimate you again." I nodded. "Good. That's their mistake." The evening sun had just dipped below the city when the Harrington Enterprises delegation arrived. Eleanor, cousin Miles, and their sharp-eyed legal counsel, Fiona. They didn't recognize the woman seated at the head of the long mahogany table. To them, I was still Claire, the quiet niece lost in some forgettable strategist role. But today, I was far from invisible. I pulled out a chair, my voice steady as I addressed them. "Good evening. I'm Claire Bennett, CEO of Apex Solutions, and I'll be leading today's meeting." Fiona's pen clattered to the polished floor. Miles's jaw clenched. Eleanor squinted, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "You? CEO? Impossible." "This is a joke," Miles spat. You're nobody. I held his gaze unflinching. You've had years to notice me, Miles. You chose not to. I smiled faintly. You never saw me because you never looked. I nodded to Nora, who began distributing folders detailing our terms. Partner with Apex or lose Crawford Industries to our 33% share acquisition, I stated clearly. I listed past deals we thwarted. Seattle Eco, Luna Fabrics, and Peak Robotics. All saved by Apex. The room fell silent. Their shock mirrored years of my own invisibility. I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to change the game. The boardroom, with its towering windows overlooking the Hudson, felt like a battlefield. Eleanor's face was carved from stone, but her eyes betrayed unease. Miles rifled through the documents, muttering about legality and leverage. Fiona whispered, "She's been there all along." Eleanor's voice trembled with rage. "You betrayed us, Claire. All this time undermining our legacy." I leaned forward, unshaken. "Your legacy destroys, mine rebuilds." I leaned forward, voice calm but unyielding. "You may sign this merger agreement and preserve some gain. Or I will acquire Crawford shares on the open market. Pex will control the company within 10 days. Eleanor stood abruptly, slamming the door as she stormed out. Nora leaned over. "Pause the meeting." I shook my head. "Let them feel the shift." Miles glared at me. "You'll regret this, Claire. We're not finished." I met his stare. "You are if you don't sign." 50 minutes later, Eleanor returned. Her defiance had softened. Without a word, she signed the agreement, the scratch of her pen, a quiet surrender. I nodded respectfully and rose. As I walked out, the New York City skyline glittered beyond the glass corridor. The April wind bit at my tailored coat, but inside I felt nothing but clarity. Crawford's merger sent Apex's stocks soaring 19% while Harrington Enterprises plummeted. For the first time, my name was on every major news outlet. Claire Banner's the enigma behind Apex Solutions. I didn't savor their defeat. I savored the moment the world finally saw me. 3 weeks later, I received a nomination for a board seat at Harrington Enterprises, a historic first for a woman, backed by Apex's 32% stake. The boardroom, lined with grim-faced men in dark suits, felt like a cage. But I walked in wearing an ivory pantsuit, my presence a quiet storm. Eyes followed me as I took my seat, the air thick with anticipation. I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was here to lead. As I sat, an older board member muttered, "She's too young to understand our world." I smiled. I've already reshaped it. If Claire's rise from overlooked niece to powerful CEO has you rooting for her, don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now for American audiences and join us as her story unfolds, revealing the battles and triumphs that shape her legacy. Miles was absent, sidelined by ongoing legal battles. When I addressed the Harrington board, my words were unwavering. Harrington Enterprises will no longer strip struggling businesses for profit, I declared. We will rebuild them, renew them, restore their legacies. The applause started cautiously, tentative claps from a few corners, but soon swelled into something genuine, albeit awkward. Fiona later emailed me an apology. "You accomplished the impossible. I want to learn from you." I saved the message but never replied. Eleanor resigned, her letter raw and honest. "I misjudged you, Claire. You've shown a better way." But before she left, she cornered me at a gala. "You think you've won," she hissed. "This family will never accept you." I held her gaze. "I don't need your acceptance. I've earned my place." Aunt Marion, caught in a viral clip mocking my ambitions, quietly disappeared from the public eye. At a major industry conference, Eleanor nodded at me. No words, just respect. These moments weren't just victories. They were signs of a world slowly bending toward fairness. I stood by my office window, New York City's sparkling skyline a constant reminder. I hadn't built Apex to destroy, but to heal. The spotlight found me, but I chose my stages carefully. In the fall of 2024 at a gala in Boston, I accepted the Strategic Innovator Award beneath a cloudless sky. Stepping onto the podium, I faced hundreds of expectant eyes. 12 years ago I began. My family laughed at my dreams of consulting. They told me to marry well, not build. A ripple of laughter swept the room, and I listened in my own way. I spoke of success not as wealth or rewards, but as impact. The greatest honour, I told them, is the message from a student who says, "I didn't think I could until I saw you." The applause that followed was long and fierce. Invitations poured in from universities to women's summits. But I spoke to share, not to shine. I told of long nights buried in reports, of doubts clawing at my resolve, and the choice to stay hidden until I was ready. In their eyes, I saw my younger self, hungry for a spark. Inspired, I launched the Summit Fund, a venture capital initiative dedicated to women-led startups. Sitting beside former assistants, single mothers turned entrepreneurs, my heart swelled, not for Apex's size, but for the dreams we were igniting. One morning, an unmarked envelope arrived. "Claire, for your eyes only." Inside was Eleanor's resignation letter, heavy with regret. "I thought business was power and control. You showed me humanity. Claire, I'm stepping down. I'm sorry." I sat at my desk, coffee warm in my hands. Not triumphant, but reflective. Change wasn't just in me. It was in the system that once confined me. I tucked Eleanor's letter into Apex's strategic journal, a quiet reminder that justice can come softly in the handwriting of the last person you'd expect. The Summit Fund's first meeting was a milestone. Women, once overlooked, teachers, nurses, dreamers, sat beside me, their voices bold and full of promise. Together, we were not just building businesses, we were building futures. I saw my journey reflected in theirs, the pain of dismissal, the strength to rise again. Apex Solutions had become more than a company. It was a beacon for those who had been overlooked, underestimated, and underestimated yet again. I realized then that my legacy wasn't in flashy headlines or soaring stock prices. It was in the courage I passed on, in the freedom to dream without fear or apology. 3 months after the Harrington board meeting, my life was unrecognizable. No more hiding behind the facade of a strategist or the shadow of a silent strategist. I was Claire Bennett, symbol and advocate for those told they didn't. The world had finally seen me, but I stayed grounded, choosing the battles and stages that truly mattered. At a women's leadership summit in New York City, I spoke to a packed auditorium of young women whose eyes sparkled with possibility and quiet defiance. Power isn't handed to you, I told them. It's built, step by step, especially when no one believes you're capable. Apex continued to grow, but my heart belonged to the Summit Fund. Through it, we funded startups led by women who had been dismissed. Teachers turned techpreneurs, single mothers launching social enterprises, veterans innovating healthcare. Their businesses blossomed like spring after a long, unforgiving winter. And my true legacy became clear. It wasn't the empire I had built from the ground up. It was the doors I opened for others. I was once the girl laughed at by her own family, branded unworthy for daring to dream beyond the narrow expectations set before me. Now I stood tall, not to prove them wrong, but to show others they could rise. To those still in the shadows, I am a reminder. Your dreams are valid. Your path is your own. Thank you for joining me on this journey, from whispered hopes in a cramped loft to standing before the world's brightest stages. If Claire's story has moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please share your thoughts below. Tell me your story. Tell me what courage means to you, and if you want more stories of resilience, triumph, and breaking the mold, subscribe for American audiences and be part of this community. Together, let's inspire each other to dream big and build boldly. Because sometimes the most powerful legacy isn't the fortune you leave behind, it's the hope you ignite. Thank you for following my journey from the quiet corners where I first dreamed to the boardrooms where I now stand. If my story has touched you, if it's sparked something inside you, I want to hear from you. Please take a moment to share your thoughts and encouragement in the comments below. Your words mean more than you know, not just to me, but to everyone watching who might be fighting their own quiet battles. Every comment is a reminder that none of us are alone in our struggles, that resilience is a collective strength. Whether you relate to the pain of being underestimated, the courage it takes to break away from what others expect of you, or the fire that drives you to build something new, your story matters. Share it. Let's create a space where our experiences uplift and inspire each other. I want you to know something important. Success isn't a straight line. It's messy, uncertain, and often lonely. But it's also powerful when you own your path, no matter how unconventional it seems. If I've learned anything, it's that the barriers others set for you are not limits. They're challenges to be overcome. When my family doubted me, I could have given up. Instead, I chose to build, not for their approval, but for my own purpose. So, here's my advice from one dreamer to another. Believe in your vision, even when it feels like the whole world is telling you to stop. Surround yourself with people who see your potential and lift you higher. And don't be afraid to start small. Every empire begins with a single determined step. Remember, your worth isn't tied to what others think you should be. It's rooted in your passion, your perseverance, and your willingness to keep going when it's hardest. If my story has inspired you to dream bigger, to take that leap, or to simply stand taller in your own life, then please subscribe for American audiences and join this journey. Together, we can share more stories of resilience and triumph, reminding each other that no matter where we start, we all have the power to build something extraordinary. Let's keep lifting each other up, sharing our victories and setbacks alike, because when we support one another, we don't just survive, we thrive. Thank you for being part of this community. I can't wait to hear your story.